You are listening to the Lawyer Stories podcast with host Benny Gold. Lawyer Stories was founded in July 2017 and is an expanding global network of lawyers and law students sharing their personal journeys to the noble profession of the practice of law. Join us on this podcast as we dig deeper into these stories and hear from lawyers and law students from around the world in all areas of the legal profession. Here at Lawyer Stories, we believe that every lawyer has a story. What's yours?
Welcome to the Lawyer Stories podcast with Benny Gold. Today we welcome in Michael Jones, personal injury attorney, handling also civil rights cases, employment at Marko Law Firm in Detroit, Michigan. We did have John Marko on the podcast, episode 108. It was a great show. How are you doing today, Michael?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me. No promises I can live up to John Marko, but I will do my best.
Yeah, he is pretty tough to live up to. By the way, I just wanted to say, I'm a big fan of your firm. John Marko, great guy. We had a really good conversation, and I'm sure he's a good mentor to you and to everybody else. Everybody else at that firm. So, congrats to Marko Law Firm in Detroit on your success, and it's great to have you with us today, Michael. So you're from Toledo, Ohio. So tell it, or outside of Toledo, Ohio, tell us what it was like growing up in a town outside Toledo, Ohio.
Yeah, and so I grew up in a rural community village, if you will, called Oak Harbor, Ohio, which is probably 30 miles. It's near Put-in-Bay is a big attraction in Cedar Point. So it's a cool spot because even though it's rural, you get tourists. It's the summertime, a lot of tourism comes in. So it started exposing me to different people, a lot of people from Cleveland and surrounding areas. But I will say that, and we'll talk about this later, I was in California. And after living in California, I realized, though, that I could always go live in a city, but to try to take a city person and bring them to a rural community, I don't know if they could ever do that, So I don't mind being raised in a rural community.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, nothing wrong with that. What's the big draw there that tourists came to see?
So Put-in-Bay is an island there that basically is just full of bars. They have Roundhouse. I think they have one bar that's known as the longest bar in the world. Bands come out there and play, but it's a kind of a tropical feel to it. And now they've been doing different concerts.
There in Toledo, huh? You don't really hear about that often. You say there's a bar called the Roundhouse?
The Roundhouse, yeah.
Sounds like a place I'd like to go.
Yeah. Well, that was big in the War of 1812. So there's a lot of history there. And I was a teacher as well. But there's Commodore Perry fought some battles there because when we kicked the British out during the American Civil War, they just kind of went up to Canada, and then there were still some battles over the islands and how they were going to draw the lines. And so, and then Cedar Point is out in Sandusky, Ohio, and that's close too. And that's one of the best amusement parks, like roller coasters.
Yeah, I got some, my brother-in-law lives in Cincinnati. That's sort of, I don't know, that's not really close, I guess, but it's Ohio, right? So.
Cincinnati's a good spot too.
Yeah, all right. And then you tell us about moving to Cali. You decided, you went to college, Bowling Green, right? That's right there in Ohio. Then you decided, enough of this, I'm going to California to check that out or whatnot. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, growing up in Oak Harbor, I learned early on that maybe I just didn't quite fit in, I come from I hear that a lot of people say this a lot of times, that they come from a very poor upbringing. But I mean, I'm talking I was raised in the trailer, and my family was racist. I got some very racist cousins, and they're proud to be that way.
Wow.
And I learned early on, I think that's what got me into civil rights and employment, doing discrimination stuff. But I knew that I needed to get away, because if I didn't get away, I might fall into the same traps.
What do they say about that now that you're doing like civil rights cases? I know that's
Yeah.
amazing, right?
Well, yeah, it's a long journey, right? And so I went through a phase. I went to Bowling Green, and later on in high school, I started getting into like the Grateful Dead, jam bands. Fish was
Oh,
a
huge fit. When was your first fit? We could have another podcast about this if you want, but when was your
uh,
first fish show? Let's date you a little bit.
yeah. I want to say '97 in
Okay,
Cincinnati.
nice.
Yeah,
12/11/95, Portland, Maine, Cumberland County Civic Center. My friend opener.
there you go. There you go. See, well, and I misspoke. It was '97. It was in Columbus, Polaris.
Okay. Yeah, I
Yeah,
went to, yeah, all right. That was when they were doing in the summer, they were doing their thing up in northern Maine. I was in Portland, Maine in high school. We drove up to like Limestone, Maine to those. Anyway, we're getting off track. So, yeah,
no,
so you were into the jam bands.
yeah. Let me tie it together for you here. And so, I went through a little bit of a phase where my hair grew long, and I was classified as a hippie. And that actually kind of ostracized me from the community as well, and my family. And for a long time, they accused me of being homosexual, and
Oh, wow. Yeah.
and but uh, I think that by living a good life, being a kind, good human being, and I've never held a grudge against anybody. They have now, I think, come full circle and understand where I come from and what I'm doing, and I do think that they respect it. And even though we may have our differences, they know not to speak certain ways around me or say certain
Yeah,
things.
no, that's really interesting, Michael. Like, how do you know? Like, if all you know is like growing up where you grew up, like, how do you know to go to California, like Berkeley, right? Like, you went out to
Yeah.
Berkeley, like, and you were a teacher for a while. Like, how do you know, like, how to escape that sort of thing? Was just something just like intrinsically didn't feel right?
My mom and my dad, my mom, they were both victims. I say victims of teen pregnancy. I worked with children that were considered at promise as opposed to at risk.
Okay.
Um, but my dad, he raised us in a very hypocritical way. You're going to be better than I am. Do as I say, not as I do. And my dad was very aware of his shortcomings.
Okay.
Was very honest about, you are not going to be like me. You are
Okay.
going to go out. And my dad was a good guy. Like he worked hard. He worked 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. He was a factory worker.
Okay.
And my mom we always came first. And she did a good job of sheltering us from hanging out with certain people
Do you
that
have
she.
siblings?
I'm a middle child. I have an older brother and two younger sisters.
Okay. Okay.
My
So
brother.
so
What's
go
that?
ahead.
Oh yeah, no, my brother went on and he became a pharmacist,
Nice.
and both my sisters are nurses,
Smart
um,
kids.
all college degrees. Yeah, and but neither of my parents finished high school.
Where do they all live? Do they all live around like same area?
My brother and my oldest younger sister, they actually moved to Tennessee and they live
Okay.
outside Knoxville. And
Okay.
my younger sister, she still lives like in Oak Harbor near my mom.
Okay. Um, wow, that's tremendous that you got away, you did your own thing. Like tell us the interest about being a teacher for
Yeah.
grade school kids.
So um, for me, education was always the ticket out, and that's how I was kind of raised. And so early on in my life, the way to give back was to be a teacher and to help some other students, kind of overcome the obstacles. So I went to school in Bowling Green, and then I did a year of teaching. It was a student teaching in Oregon, Ohio, at Clay High School. But what was nice about that experience was that the supervising teacher um, had basically gotten into some trouble and was almost like suspended. So I basically had a substitute. So I was basically running the class by myself.
It's awesome.
Um, and I really loved it, but I knew I was reading a lot of Jack Kerouac, listening to the Dead, and like there was always that kind of beatnik culture about "Go West, young man." And so I had a chance as soon as I graduated. I packed up a Pontiac. I sold everything I owned, packed up a Pontiac Vibe. Didn't even have an apartment. Found an
Yeah.
apartment on my way out there, and when I was going, everybody said, "Well, it can be dangerous out there. You need to go to this place called Walnut Creek, California. It's kind of safe." So
Okay.
I spent 9 months in Walnut Creek, and and I couldn't get a teaching job out there because I couldn't get the credential to transfer.
Okay.
But I found this job where I would put on plays for fourth, fifth, and sixth graders, teaching them history.
Interesting. So wait, was your major at Bowling Green? Was it like it was history? Was it history? No,
Education.
education. Yeah.
Yeah.
So then you couldn't get it to transfer out to California. So you did find a job though. That's pretty cool. So
Yeah. So what it was that at that point, there were so many teachers that you couldn't get into like do the student teaching mentoring type program you need to do to transfer your license from Ohio to California. I couldn't get in anywhere.
right.
Get into like a traditional school.
Got it. So you got this job teaching kids like history through performance?
Yeah. So it was fourth, fifth, and sixth graders. Fourth graders would learn California history, and I had this time machine that if the children, peeked, their eyeballs would pop out of their head. So I had to, cover their eyeballs, and this time machine would count us down and take us to different areas, And so we go down to like 15. I forget the dates now. I think it was like 1592. Juan Cabrillo comes from Spain into like San Diego, and then we start building the missions. And the entire time you're kind of telling stories, kind of telling jokes.
Yep.
But that really started getting me speaking in front of people and becoming very comfortable and learning presentation skills that I'm using now as a trial lawyer.
That's great. That's really interesting. So like so it sounds like you had a good experience. Like, and by the way, Grateful Dead, like did you ever get to see Jerry or no?
I never did.
Okay.
I know we were talking about that, but no, I missed out on actually seeing Jerry as well. But
I know 95, that was early. So what was the moment that you were like, I'm going to be a lawyer. Like, I'm going to become a lawyer. These skills are going to transfer, and like, this is what I need to do.
Yeah. So for me, this is also a very funny story, but when you have long hair and you present a certain way, you get profiled. Very similar to the way I think some of my African American clients are getting profiled. And I was coming home from the bar in Bowling Green on Halloween. And I was not drinking because I actually had to do a presentation the next day, but I was with some friends, we had just went out.
Yep.
And I would go to this bar that all the time, and I never needed my ID because I knew the owners and everything. And so as we were coming home and I'm dressed in a Batman costume, I go to be the superhero and I'm going to kind of stop traffic. Well, there's this car that's like 3 blocks down the road, and Bowling Green's a small, again, rural community. And I go on the road and I hold my hand out like I'm stopping traffic, and this car comes flying up, and I get out of the roadway. Well, it turns out that it was like an undercover cop, and he jumps out of the car, and right away, he starts giving me a hard time and asking me. Well, first of all, he handcuffs me and he throws me on the hood of the car.
Wow.
And he says, "What's your name?" And I said,
Batman.
That's right. I didn't have an ID, and he does this like 2 more times. And now there's a group of people that have come around because, this guy's basically yelling at me, and he's just being kind of a bully. And so finally he says, I'm going to ask you one more time. You're going to get arrested. And I said, well, you got to lean down here because it's, kind of embarrassing. And he leans down and I go, it's Bruce Wayne, but it's an alter ego. And the cop ended up roughing me up a little bit, putting me in the back of the cruiser. I had to go into the courthouse. And that was the moment when I realized that police, I wanted to hold police accountable.
Wow.
For the way that they acted towards people.
Wow. That's interesting. That's cool that you have like a story behind that. And now you're really doing just that. So, and you went to McGeorge Law School, California, and you really got into it. Like you were like mock trial champion, right? That was, that's pretty amazing. Like what advice would you have for a law student?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, if you're deciding that you want to go to law school, have a serious heart-to-heart talk with, it's not a job that you can just dabble in. It's you're 100% in, and it's 50 to 60 hours is the minimum, and expect to work a lot more. I would say though that law school take the time to really get to know your classmates, because those are going to be the people you're going to get referrals from. You're going to need, you start building that network early, and you can make really great friends in law school. But also kind of have an idea what you want to do when you go to law school. And
Yeah.
I knew that I wanted to be a trial attorney. And so I wanted to get into the trial advocacy program and start learning about, doing that type of work.
How many years between college and your law school were there?
And
10?
I
So
was,
that's amazing. Like, do you think taking time off out of the law, like I know you had a different job, but do you think taking time off and going back was beneficial to you?
yeah, I mean, obviously you come in with a little bit more experience, a little bit more maturity.
Yep.
There were definitely those in my law school that would go to bar review, a thing that happens like on Thursday night, and be all
Yep.
hungover in class on Friday.
Right.
Um, I think it helped me. I did very well in law school, and I think it's because I was committed. Um, you know, and I think it's helped me in my early years of practice because I do have that sort of maturity, take things serious.
Right.
I know this is what I want to do.
I feel like after coming from a job like being a teacher, like you also would know the value of time, like the day. You don't let the day pass you by. You know that you need to get certain things done. You know how to schedule your day, type of thing.
Yeah, that's right. One great thing that we learn as a teacher is something called backwards planning. So when you're lesson planning, you start with what's the goal and where do I want to get the students? And trial work is very much like that. It's starting with the jury instructions. How do I get there? And what is it that I'm going to need at trial to prove that? And working the case backwards.
Totally. So, what was your first job out of law school?
My first job out of law school was with a guy named Lawrence Bohm and the Bohm Law Group. So one thing I've always wanted to do and try to be committed to is finding the best attorney I can and try to learn and mentor from them.
Gotcha.
Lawrence had the highest employment law verdicts in the state of
That's right.
California.
That's right. And like we said, I mean, you're obviously very committed to your clients. You took law school very seriously. I mean, you had the best opening argument at the moot court competition. Is that what it was at the school? And then
That's right. Yeah.
yep, and then you went on and you were doing like do you think it's important, or why do you think it's important for students to be involved in like clinics and externships and all of these things and to take advantage of all those things? I know you touched on knowing networking with your classmates, but how about the school, taking advantage of what they have to offer as well?
Yeah, because I've never had a client come in and ask me the rule against perpetuity.
Yeah, there you go. That's
the
a good enough answer. I know it's
Yeah.
a good answer. So, it seems like you're pretty in line with John, who we had on our show, episode 108, and his firm. So, like, why? And you told us the Batman story. What about like did you turn? Why else to like PI, employment law, civil rights? I mean, I do see a lot of good reasons in there with your family and your Batman situation. But tell us more about that.
Yeah. So I worked with Lawrence for about 3 years, and I actually then went over and went to work for Liberty Mutual. And the
Okay.
goal was I wanted to get some trial work in. And I thought, well, with the insurance defense, I could do that. One of the biggest struggles for young attorneys is actually getting into the courtroom. And when you work with a firm, like with Lawrence, anytime you got the case up to trial, when it went, he would end up doing the trial.
Okay.
So I learned, though, being in the insurance company, that I couldn't do that when it was just about saving a corporation dollars versus, helping somebody in pain and helping them get the justice they deserve. I knew at that moment that my calling was really to try to help victims and to stand up against these bullies.
Okay. So yeah, I would say that's a good reason. Like, where do you see yourself? Do you have any goals for like down the road, like 5, 10 years?
I'm really happy with being at Marko Law, and John Marko is really he's doing some amazing things in Michigan right now. And I see a lot of growth potential just within that firm. And maybe somewhere down the line being a partnership, but I'm really happy where I'm at, and I see myself being here for the long term. And really, I've been in Michigan now for 2 years, and just really getting some roots laid down here in Michigan, and hopefully with Marko Law.
That's awesome. So going back to law school, like what if somebody's like looking to go to law school? Like, do you have any advice for somebody what advice would you have for a prospective law student?
Yeah. Um, you know where you want to practice. Uh, Choose a state that you want to practice and go to law school in that state. And more importantly, like understand, again, I just think understand the commitment that you're making. I think a lot of times people glorify and think being a lawyer might be something different than it really is.
Yeah.
The law, I always joke with people and I say it's the one profession where you not only have like a boss, and you got a client on one side that's telling you something to do, you got an opposing attorney on the other side trying to make your life miserable, you got a judge, and so
Yeah, that's true. I never thought about all the different you got a lot of bosses, I guess.
There's a lot of pressure, and I think sometimes it gets glorified based on TV, and so just make sure that you're very clear that you got to have a passion for it, and you got to really care about what you're doing.
Yeah, that's awesome. What do you enjoy most about it?
When there's a number of things. One is when I get a client that comes in and they've been bullied and harassed, and I get to depose that person and put them in the hot seat and expose them for the lies that they're telling, and that person later says, "Thank you. I really appreciated what you did for me."
Yeah.
I mean, that is a lot of satisfaction. And then obviously when you can get them the money justice that they deserve, and that it's helping them to try to get their life back
right
to where they were before the injury.
Right, totally. So what's a typical day like at Marko Law? Like you go in there and then what happens from there?
Yeah. That just depends. My day tomorrow is going to be, I have a hearing at 8:30 in the morning.
Nice.
I'm going to go from there to a staff meeting, and then I'm going to go into a deposition. And then I'm going to go into a different meeting at like 5:30 in the afternoon. And
really? Different 5:30 on tomorrow's Friday, everybody.
Yeah.
I mean, as of this recording. So, all right.
Yeah. So there'll be it's just called like a leadership meeting that we've been trying to do to just help the firm grow. So,
okay.
And then on top of all that, I have a trial that's starting in 10 days.
Wow.
So
okay.
I'm drafting an opening. That's what I've been working on tonight. Doing my voir dire.
You don't need to work that hard in your opening. You won like the whole thing at law school, right? Like, should be just like that, right?
Yeah. Well, the truth is, and Craig Hilborn, that he helps run our office, and him and I were talking today, and the best thing you can do though is you got to be yourself. You got to be authentic.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lot of what it is. And so you got to know the facts, but at the end of the day, you just got to talk to jurors as human beings.
Yeah, no, totally. I think that's awesome. Tell us about like the importance of having a mentor. Did you have mentors along the way, or not really? I mean, do you have one now, or?
Yeah. That's a very interesting question about mentors. I think that I found mentors in just random places. When I was at CWE, the place where I was putting on the plays for kids, I had a boss there that I learned from him kindness and compassion for treating people and your employees a certain way. I got to watch him kind of grow a business. Lawrence Bohm was a mentor in the sense that, Lawrence was great, that he would just say, "Here you go." I was barred, and the next day I think I was taking a deposition of one of the highest ranking officials in the state of California, and she's an attorney, so I'm trying to depose an attorney on my very first deposition. Wow. And as I look back at it now, she had me kind of going in circles, but I got that hands-on experience,
Yeah.
But I'm excited to be working with John in the sense that, I get to see, John, how he's putting these cases together, and he's a lot more involved in kind of the day to day and giving me advice, how I'm handling things. And so,
do you do like all the writing too, like to the briefs, and do you do all the writing? And wow, crazy! That's a lot.
yeah, so it's writing briefs, appeals, showing up for hearings, doing depositions, reading documents, answering discovery, drafting complaints, interviewing clients,
Wow,
developing the story.
wow, it's a lot, man. I'd be like spent by the end of the day, huh? I'd be that's that's a lot of work you're doing. So are you involved in? Let's give a shout out to Lawyers University. Are you involved with them yet, or what?
Yeah, well, so I went to the Vegas conference.
Nice.
Yeah, I learned a lot of great things, especially with like voir dire. Um,
Okay.
and yeah, so that's been about the extent of it. I haven't been able to take one of Dan's courses yet on like you know um, structuring your argument or things like that. But that's definitely something that I want to do maybe down the line here.
That's awesome. And by the way, like if you ever, I don't know how often you are on like social media and that sort of thing, but if you ever see somebody in Lawyer Stories that looks like somebody you'd want to connect with, I know you talked about connecting with people in law school and like that's your network. I'd be happy to make a warm introduction between you and whoever you see that I might know. I don't know them all, but I've met like a lot of good people, quality people through my journey with Lawyer Stories. So I'd be more than happy to introduce you, no matter where they are, and if I know them, that's like no problem.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I always feel like you can never have enough quality people in your life.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. So have we left any like advice out or anything that you'd like to share with the Lawyer Stories community?
No, I mean, I think that we pretty much covered it all. I'm very blessed to be able to be an attorney. I'm very thankful for that every day.
Yeah.
And, very thankful for the sacrifices my parents made.
That's awesome. So I actually have I wrote down two Grateful Dead YouTube videos that I think you should watch. So like one is Giant Stadium 6/17/91. Bruce Hornsby, Eyes of the World. I watch it with my son during COVID a lot. It's amazing, and he's on the piano, Bruce Hornsby, and then Branford Mansalis, 3/29/90, Eyes of the World. He's got a horn, and it's pretty sweet. But anyway, I don't know if the rest of the Lawyer Stories community is interested in that, but that's a shout out to the Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
So
Inspiration, move me brightly.
there you go. So it was a pleasure to have you on and to talk to you about your journey. And I wish you like the best of luck at Marko Law. Hopefully, we'll stay in touch. And you can stay right there. Is there anything else? We're good?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
You got it, man. All right, stay right there. And everybody else, wherever you are in the world today, enjoy yourselves. Cheers.